number of presentations over the years. And I was very, very fortunate. Probably in 2018, I got to see Sean present at Drexel University. And there was a class, and the class was promoted on TV. It was like this whole day about sneaker history, sneaker culture. And I thought, oh my gosh, this would be really cool. And I want to take my son, who was like kind of a sneakerhead. So I call and they're like, oh, you have to be a Drexel student to attend. And I'm like, well, I don't usually like throw names or anything, but I'm like, I'm the president of the accessories council and I want to come to the event. And I paid, but they let me come. And I got done to the end at the end of the day, and my son loved it. And he doesn't love anything school, like, and I loved it for very different reasons. So after the class was over, I said to Sean, we're going to need to be friends because I need to share this message with our industry, because the stories and the egregious mistakes and that not just happened, but continue to happen, really upset me to the core. And it's avoidable, simple, avoidable things. And then, while we're all home for the pandemic, horrible things happen with George Floyd. And the message that we were trying to tell just got more important. And so I'm really grateful to have Sean as a friend of the council. And so I'm going to move over and let him move in and get going. Yeah, trading places.
All right.
Okay. I will move it ahead.
Okay.
Come on over, grab a seat.
Come on in. Come on in. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody online. Good morning, everyone here. I am Sean Williams, co-founder of Obsessive Sneaker Disorder and the SOLEcial Studies CommUNITY Academy. We recently opened about a year ago now in the Dumbo section of Brooklyn as the world's first business and culture sneaker academy. But the SOLEcial Studies program itself has been around for 13 years now. We're in our 13th year. We've taught to students representing 200 different countries around the world, MBA program level down. Program has won awards. And we have over 150 people who've taken courses through SOLEcial Studies and now work in the sneaker industry, either as entrepreneurs, work for brands big and small. And, in our journey, again, to sort of piggyback off of Karen and how we got together, we get to meet some really interesting people who understand the work that we're doing. And it kind of invigorates us to find more ways to offer the educational experience through the lens of sneakers. Sneakers are usually a really great icebreaker to a lot of different conversations. And Karen and I met through one of those situations in an educational context, but again, not long after we met, it was less than a year after Karen and I met, or roughly a year, that the world changed. COVID hit. May 25th, 2020, something happened that for all of us sort of changed our consciousness, So we started having these conversations around what's important to the next generation of makers and creators, and even the folks who work at a lot of these brands now, who are sitting there in spaces where things are being made and they're witnessing the egregious mistakes that happen. So this course, Fashionably Wrong, you can go back to the first slide right there. So this course, Fashionably Wrong.
Make sure I have it on. Hold on for a second online. We're getting it
Yeah,
together here.
This course, Fashionably Wrong, was accelerated in its sense of urgency because of what happened to George Floyd and because of the responses that a lot of people from all walks of life gave to that tragic murder, which, just to make sure everyone is aware of now, just made 4 years. May 25th, 2020. So during that time, I had the opportunity to meet Terrence Floyd, brother of the late George Floyd, and understand what he's doing with his organization, and shared the work that was already started with Karen and I with him. And he instantly wanted to become a part of this. And with the opening of the academy and with us expanding our offerings past just the usual sneaker business and culture, you know, we all decided to make this a priority, this particular presentation and lesson and workshop a priority. So, you know, Terrence couldn't be here today, but he will be very active alongside us teaching this course. As you can imagine, since 2020, all the places he's been and the situations that he's had to deal with. And one of the things that he even says a lot when he's out is, and it's a very powerful statement, when we hear George Floyd, we hear it once. He hears it twice, because his father was George Floyd also. So he is taking this very seriously. He's into footwear and fashion. He's from Brooklyn. You know, he's into a lot of things, and, you know, from fashion and footwear perspective that we're into. And he's going to be very active, and he's an ally with us in this course. So let's show them the statement. Here, you guys have read the statement here, that are with us in person.
Hold
Go
on,
back
you're
one
gonna
slide.
get me, there we,
So for those of you online, this is Terrence's opening statement for the course. For those of you who are here with me, you read that really quick. Our goal with this is to get people to really have a look at a very unflattering highlight reel. Number one, we have a very unflattering highlight reel. And then number two, we pose some questions that serve as a toolkit. And then number three, we talk about what we think should be the solution to the issue if, or the penalty for the issue, if something actually makes it to market. So let's show you how we're going to do that today. So there we go. The unflattering highlight reel. We're going to discuss really quickly inspiration versus appropriation. What steps should be taken to avoid offensive product creation. And I think one of those that really doesn't get spoken about enough is how brands of all sizes, independents, big, small, how can people be more in tune with various lifestyles and cultures? And that one, for me personally, is one that I've seen probably be the most neglected. Because geographically, where the headquarters for a lot of these big brands are located, they're in a bubble away from the rest of us. And the only thing they're using to try and figure out what different lifestyles and cultures is all about is the internet. And then we leave with a checklist of questions. You guys have a toolkit of questions that you can use to create your own policies and procedures and ways of creating and making things so that you do not add to the unflattering highlight reel that we're about to show you. Right? So here we start with one that I remember when I was a younger lad, which was a very big deal. Nike in 1997 releases this series of 4 shoes. Now I want you to keep in mind the names: the Air Bacon, the Air Melt, the Air Grill, and the Air BQ. So keep those names in mind. All of these shoes feature the word air on the heel, their graphic style similar to the word Allah written in Arabic. At that time, one of Nike's hugest faux pas in the history of the country, of the company. The entire Middle East boycotted Nike, removed product from their stores, and burned them in piles. Now, once this was known that this was incredibly offensive, that was a reaction in the Middle East. For those of us in the United States who had these shoes, their solution was to bring the shoes back to the store where you got them from, and we'll give you a sticker to put over it. We'll give you a sticker that says Nike Air. Just slap it over that and keep going. That was their answer to the pairs that were still at retail and unsold, and for the folks who had these shoes. And they were literally walking around with probably one of the most offensive symbols of disrespect for Islamic culture and religion. And it's very obvious that anyone who's well aware of, rules of Islam and religious practice, the first thing you do when you go into a mosque is take your shoes off. So it's highly offensive to see the word God, Allah, written on shoes. So even though this wasn't Nike's intent, which we're gonna get into in a minute, should there have been somewhere along the way that this was caught? Definitely, right? That process didn't exist. Tens of thousands of pairs of these shoes were made. This was 4 different models of shoes that had this on the back. I'm just showing one here. So on the next slide, we show the influence, the actual real influence. How's that? That was innocently enough the original intent for why that Nike Air was written on the back of those shoes. Summertime, grilling, 4th of July. But in that process, there was nothing for someone to say, this looks a little like something we don't want to put on product. Because there were a room full of all white males, and there was no very perspective on what this could potentially be once it makes it to the market. Simple enough. That was the innocent enough influence behind those shoes. Summertime, grilling on the barbecue, burgers, hot dogs, having a good time. If you're a teacher, you're on vacation, very innocently enough, went horribly wrong. Offended in 1997, at the time, an estimated 1 billion Muslims. Who would think that something so innocent could lead to such a nightmare of an offense, right? Again, it's all about the process by which these things should be, audited, if you will, for lack of a better word at the moment, before it makes it to market. So let's show the next one. Anybody here or online remember this one? So Jeremy Scott, who, for all intents and purposes is
We
known.
can't see it online, Sean. I'm sorry. We can't see the presentation or the slides.
Okay,
Yeah.
one sec.
Okay, let me try again. Hold on. And thank you for,
Tamiko.
thank you for letting us know. We're gonna. That's weird that it's blurred. Hold on, let me,
We'll get that up.
give
for
me
you.
a
One sec.
second here. Let's see. Wonder why the slide is. Can you, hold on. Maybe if I don't put it in full, because you need to see this. Can you see that now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. All
Awesome.
right, I'll just do it this
Awesome.
way.
So did you not see the first example online?
No,
Okay, we'll go back to that for a second.
No, yeah, we only saw the home page. slide, and then that was it. We didn't get to see the
Oh, I
statement
wonder if I need to reshare every time I'm
from,
long. Can you see the Nike
Yeah,
at this moment?
we
You
can,
see
yes,
that?
now we can see it,
Okay.
but we didn't see the statement from George Floyd's brother.
Okay, we'll go back to that for a sec.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that. Thanks for,
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
okay.
Cool.
And, okay, so that was the first sneaker and that was
Yeah.
the
So the
inspiration.
original inspiration there.
Okay.
And now we're at Jeremy Scott and Adidas 2012. And Jeremy Scott has had a very long and very noteworthy partnership with Adidas. And this was one of the last shoes, for obvious reasons, in that partnership. So obviously, I think, folks online and even here with me in person are looking at this and they're literally shaking their head in disbelief. Jeremy Scott has again been known to push the envelope with putting things like teddy bears, and wings, and all kind of crazy things on his shoes from his Adidas collaborations years prior. His shoes with the wings on the side of them were insanely popular to the point where recently Adidas even brought them back out. And they were being sold at least $250 a pair. And we would joke, those of us who are like hardcore sneakerheads, even though I hate using that term, we weren't into it, but we were literally saying it seems like he's taking things from his basement and just throwing them on a shoe, and Adidas is making it. It literally seemed that way. Teddy bears, wings, all these flames, and all these things that were on the shoes. If you all remember seeing Jeremy Scott's product. But this one hit really different because of the instant, jarring reference to slavery on it. And people were literally couldn't, they were like, no, this is not real. Adidas is not going to put this out. This didn't happen. Somebody photoshopped this. This can't be a real product. And it actually was. Adidas was going to put this out. So it was told to me because at the time, Adidas had the license for the NBA. And it was the last couple of years of the license. So they started the negotiations for who was going to end up getting the new NBA license for apparel and uniforms and all of that. Because whoever has that by default, it's a windfall of product awareness and cash, and all of that as a residual of the NBA being so popular, you could reap the benefits of. This came towards the end of Adidas's license. So when the images of these shoes hit the internet, it was told to me that certain political activists reached out to the NBA and put the pressure on them and said, there's going to be a lot of problems with you guys in the league if you give Adidas this license after this is what kind of product they put out. Unconfirmed, what I heard. But as you can see, this product here is worthy of that conversation from someone. Now, let's show the original influence.
Can you see that?
So is anyone
Yes.
old enough to remember My Pet Monster? A few of us here are, not everybody. This was a very big toy, very popular toy. And it was actually put out by the American greeting card company. They were the manufacturers of this toy. This was a popular toy. So on one side, yes, what we were saying in the sneaker community about Jeremy Scott just literally taking stuff from his basement and throwing it on Adidas sneakers. This was confirmation for us that it was true. But now again, let's talk about the reason why we're here, right? At what point in the process Does someone see this and not see the issue? How do you not see the jarring reference visually of what this represents without any context, making it out onto the market? Again, the process went wrong. There's flaws. Now, was Adidas making a lot of money with Jeremy Scott, where they said to him, just go for it, do what you want? It was obvious at that point, because if for this to reach that point, it was obvious. They were literally telling him, just do what you want. We got you. We'll make it. And this right here this was it. Like, this finally reached that point where, okay, we really need to not mess this up. We've done bad here. And I actually know folks in the UK who actually own pairs of these. They made it to market. They were pulled, but they made it to market. I know people who own pairs of these shoes. So how could that be, right? Now, obviously, those people are not wearing them. Because then that's a whole other set of problems if you start walking around the street wearing something like this. But this made it. This entire product, this was manufactured. It made it to the point of manufacture.
Crazy.
Right? Like, folks online, folks here with me, at what point do you not do this, right? So again, another example of something on the unflattering highlight reel. Next slide. 2019. Burberry sends a model down the runway of its winter 2019 fashion show with a noose around her neck. I can't see the reactions of the people online, but I'm looking at the reactions of everyone here with me in person. It's not one of joy.
I think that is allowable in any circumstance.
Now, this one isn't even, I mean, it is in the product making stage because it was actually a part of the product. But then fashion shows take creative direction. So now there's a second wave of offense here because you're going to go down the runway and show this off. This is your look. This was coordinated, put together to be presented. The first offense was that it was made in the first place. The second offense was somebody gave it creative direction to present it like it was okay. So now you're talking a total different level of systems gone wrong. I get it. Fashion shows, everyone's trying to make a statement. They want the news talking about it, and they want all the trades and everybody saying, oh, their show was amazing. They really knocked it out the park. We're looking forward to what they're going to do, and get it. This shouldn't have made it though. But it did. So let's go to the next. We talked about being way off. Can everybody online see? You guys good?
You got a Louis Vuitton sweater up there?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
So my wife is Jamaican. So when we found out about this one, I can't repeat some of the stuff that she said, but how far off do you need to be in order to realize that you just have not done your homework? How far off do you have to be? This is 2020. A $1,340 sweater that was supposed to be inspired by the national flag of Jamaica. This is 2020. How far off do you need to be, right? And then the audacity to want someone to pay $1,300 plus tax for it. This is happening. These things are really happening, y'all. So this one right here.
Moving on.
Yep. This one right here Again, the folks in the room with me here, the faces are of shock and awe. So I can only imagine what you guys see online. But now again, the conversation leads to how much in tune are you gonna be with other races and cultures around the world? Because it's one thing to make product just for where you are and people where you know you're gonna have a good customer base and client base. But nothing local is really local anymore. Things spread. So 2021, again, post George Floyd, this happens. South African designer Daniel Gobini creates this line of rope neckties. And they are insanely popular in South Africa. He did well with these. But the word got to us here in America that he is making these in South Africa. Now, what's the problem with that in America? It's obvious. But Daniel's from South Africa. And South Africa had apartheid. Their brand of racism and symbols of racism are way different than the symbols of racism that we've dealt with here. So he didn't see that as a symbol of what we saw it as in America, because they had a whole different set of checklists for racism and violence against people of color over there. Totally understand that. But again, it's about in 2021, sure, you're making something that you want to be local in South Africa and be a hit where you're from. But nothing local is ever really local anymore. So this next one, Scott and I were talking about this one yesterday.
2024.
2024. Are we not exhausted yet? Are we exhausted just looking at these? Raise your hand with me if you're exhausted already.
Exasperate.
It's 2024. Adidas launches their new SL72 campaign featuring Bella Hadid, who is very pro-Palestine. Makes no mistakes about it. The Israeli government strongly takes offense, and Adidas pulled the campaign as a result. But that wasn't the end of it. Bella Hadid sues Adidas for a lack of accountability. Right move to make. Right move to make. She should sue them. Because just to give a little history of this particular model, the SL72, and I'll put a little personal experience with the model in here. Adidas has been pushing this particular silhouette
Adidas is off.
as we're all wearing them. I'm wearing Adidas right now too. Adidas has made it their business to make this model SL72 the next it shoe now that they've seen what happened with the Samba. So they have put a lot of effort into promoting this particular model. So the Bella Hadid campaign, this one that I'm going to show the next slide. This one,
Do you want me to move
Yep,
on yet?
yep.
Okay.
this campaign is here for the Olympics. Now, just to provide context, the SL72 model released originally in 1972. Does anyone here know what happened in 1972? For those of you who do not know, that was the Olympics, where 11 Israeli athletes were taken out of the Olympic Village and murdered. So you have what's going on in the world right now, and you create a campaign where there's obvious tension,
Chills, just how.
and you take this model that is a symbol of that, and you put it on someone like Bella Hadid, who a very popular person, rated one of the most beautiful people in the world. We get it. Was this right to do? Especially during an Olympic year and with an Israel-Hamas war going on, and you put out a shoe that is a symbol of something tragic from an Olympic event. Where were we in the room when it was time to make this decision, right? What was the process like? Bella should sue. She absolutely should sue and she should win. Because if you're Adidas, you don't do this. You don't put me in the position as a global figure to represent this.
Does she have accountability too, though, for not knowing what she was signing up to represent?
The devil's advocate, our question of that is a good one to pose. It is, knowing her stance on everything.
Maybe she wasn't told it's gonna be called the SL72.
Well, she's been in the previous, there's already a previous SL72 campaign. She's been in campaigns for this model already, just not this. She's actually released a couple of pairs of SL72s already, just not this.
I mean, it's both, it seems wrong on so many levels, but if you're a spokesperson, you should have, you need to know what you're speaking for, I think.
But as
I kind of, can I add to that, Sean?
yes.
Miko, I think it's, you know, I had heard of the controversy. I wasn't exactly sure. And so I'm glad you gave it context because I did not realize what happened in 1972. And I'm also, as you are, a woman of a certain age, but I think a younger generation, that's even further away for them. And so to Karen's question, I think it, you know, it can slightly become a slippery slope. Because, you know, I just think sometimes as spokespeople and, you know, also as someone who's been in front of the camera, you don't necessarily connect the dots all the time. And so I think it's a really interesting conversation, but really important one.
Yeah.
That awareness is vital.
Yep. Yeah,
Is vital.
This is easily one of Adidas's biggest controversies, and they have a string of them.
And they do, and also being a German company, if I'm correct.
Yeah, and
That's the other thing, right?
That's what I thought of initially. I was like, oh, and they're also a German company.
and I didn't even touch that part because I mean, like that just puts the cherry on top of what we already have put out there as the factors for why this is wrong, right? Like this particular model, if there's any time you don't promote it, this is the time during the Olympics where you leave it alone. This is not the time to promote that model because it's a symbol of what happened at the 72 Olympics. This shoe released that year. Shocking, right? Are we tired yet? We tired? Are we tired?
Yeah. I just, I just have to ask, like, there's so many, how do they not know? Like, how does it get to a point where you've clearly spent a lot of money to shoot a campaign? You're
And
clearly.
pay her a lot of money.
Right, like, how
Scott
does
and I
that-
can't afford Bella.
Yeah, we don't get Bella.
But someone knew, because knowing the history of the shoes, calling it SL72, they know where it originated from. They knew it originated in 72 during an Olympic year.
Well, here's
Do
where
they? I mean,
here's where I'm gonna
my
let you in on
team- if my team is running an ad campaign, do you know that you weren't even born, right? I mean, would it occur to you?
History of the shoe, like, why bring it back? You're going into the archives of the company to reinstate, put out the same design from a year. You have to know where it came from, how it was designed, why it was designed, when, what was going on, and what happened in history.
1972.
Yeah.
When it came out, so that you can promote it properly and say, I'm bringing this back out because we're celebrating something. You know, I'm a shoe designer, so if you're doing this kind of research, you're going into archives, you read the history of what's going on and why the shoe did not be designed it. What was it used for? What's for what industry? Where was it placed? What was the reaction then? these things.
I
You
think
find
as
out
soon
these
as you
things.
pull up 1972 Olympics, the first thing
The
that
first
pops up.
thing to find out about the controversy, what happened, so you know.
So was it on purpose?
It was known at one point and then trickled down to design and marketing, lost that information.
So again, it's the process,
It's the
right?
process.
It is the
It's
process.
not telling the story over and over and over. and throughout the whole time.
Perhaps though, if Sean hadn't already given us other Adidas boo-boos, it'd be like, okay, we made a mistake, but they have a history of mistakes. So don't you do more diligence if you've already made,
If you already have an unflattering highlight reel, or you're a part of one like someone like me creates and teaches with, you would think that part of your process would be, okay, let's make sure that what we do this time is not gonna add to that unflattering highlight reel. This is the sneakers and fashion version of what Shaq calls shacking a fool. These NBA highlights where NBA players just do some of the dumbest plays imaginable. This is our version here, right? So
Well, I think, and then it's also important that, as someone in the room was speaking about, process,
Yep.
right? So, we have ideation and marketing and publicity, and we know what it takes to bring a campaign to market. Now it's becoming, extremely vital that a part of the process is, cultural research.
Mhm.
And that has to become a part of the steps of bringing something to market and storytelling.
yep, and
And
you're,
ultimately
you're
production.
leading up to where we're gonna go. You're leading up to where we're gonna go. So Tamiko knows me well, love her.
Okay,
Uh,
I'll mute myself.
So our next section is gonna be inspiration versus appropriation. So before we hit the next slide on that, we'll stay right here for a second. Just to ask people in the room, do we know the difference between inspiration and appropriation? If you don't, it's okay, because it's something that should be on your list of things to pay attention to. So
probably a
let's,
blurry line.
it is, but you usually see where the line is when someone does something wrong, like the next slide. So let's show the next slide.
Okay.
2020, once again, 2020 was a year, wasn't it? Rihanna offends people of Hindu faith with a lack of modesty while displaying this religious symbol, which we have all seen in various places and our travels and even here around New York City. So this is Rihanna posing with a necklace of that symbol topless. And they came for her. She doesn't do much wrong, at least not from what I see. But this one, she got it wrong. So just a brief example of to be mindful. There are a lot of people who take religious symbols and, things in other languages, and they make accessories and get tattoos and do all these things, and they haven't done the proper research to find out what the proper usage is of said symbols, where they should be placed, how. I mean, first one out the gate, right? That we started today with, right? That one, that's basic Islam, really. But, other religions that aren't as popular or people don't dig as far in depth for and see things like this, and they might think, oh, what's the issue here? Hey, Amy. They may think, hey, what's the issue here? You gotta do your research on these things before you put them in whatever application you plan on using them. She's topless, but it could have been put on a t-shirt that was cut up, and there's a whole lot of context to symbolism and language and things that we have to pay attention to. And it has to be tastefully and very, very, very respectfully applied. So this was an example of where it wasn't. And Rihanna learned that lesson. She doesn't do much wrong, like I said, from what I see in terms of, you know, her beauty line and the storytelling that she puts into her products and the motivation behind them. But this one was a big one for her. That was a big mistake that she learned from. So next slide. Here we go. 2018, 2020. 2020. Whew. Are we not tired from like going over 2020 already? Are we not tired? I mean, this is all between 2018 and 2020. My folks online, you can see this still, right? You guys are good? Someone say yes?
Mika, are you
Yeah.
there? Are we
Yes.
good? Okay, cool.
Okay, so here we are. 2018 and between 2018 and 2020, these three brands committed these cultural appropriation offenses. Now, Gucci, I'm sure we've all somewhat, shape, or form saw this faux pas. Comme des Garçons. That's a wig that model's wearing. And then the ultimate here was, oh man, the Dolce and Gabbana with the ad where the woman eating pizza with chopsticks.
Didn't they get kicked out of? They got kicked out of somewhere, didn't they? Japan?
There was such a, I mean, that one there was so much of a backlash in so many ways for it. But I'm looking at your face right now. Hey, what are you thinking?
I could imagine someone in that photo shoot saying, oh, that would be cool, just, you know, it's a combination of like Eastern culture, with Western culture for eating the chopsticks. But at that point, it's like, nobody, again, who's the adult in the room? Just because you think that idea comes out of your mouth. Not every idea that comes out of your mouth is the right thing to do. But I also would love to hear, like, or if you have the inspiration that they said throw these ideas, because
I don't have it, and the reason why
Porno
I don't
is-
have it, and the reason why I don't have it is because everywhere that we're gonna see these, you're not gonna get that explanation. You're looking at this right here. There are thousands of people who are gonna see this exactly in this same way, with no context, no explanation. And there's gonna be a reaction, right? And this is what you're gonna see. You're gonna flip through a magazine, you're gonna turn on the TV, you're gonna flip through social media, you're gonna go on Gucci's website and see product. And this is what you're gonna see without what you're asking. That's the problem, right? The end result of what should have been a process to avoid this. So your question is good, but we're never gonna get the opportunity to have that. That's what the real big offense is in making and allowing this kind of stuff to go to market, is we're never going to be given that inside scoop on why this looks the way it looks, why it was created, and what it's trying to tell us. We see an Asian person eating pizza with chopsticks. We see someone in half blackface, and we see someone with a cornrowed blonde wig on, walking down a runway. That was a fashion show. And all of this again, 2018 to 2020. Time reference is important. 2018 to 2020. This is
Can
what's going on all the time.
Can I ask what could be, can I play, I don't necessarily want to say devil's advocate, but even to your point about appropriation versus inspiration, because I agree with Karen where it can be a blurred line.
Mhm.
And while I, as a Black woman, because my camera's off, did not, while I did take insensitivity to the Gucci, this with the Sambo lips, which is what I considered it.
Well, a lot of people considered it.
While I thought it was extremely insensitive, I also, as a creative and as an artist, left a little room because it is a part of American history. And I've been to Myrtle Beach where they have Sambo salt and pepper shakers, and I was like, this is disgusting. But I also know that in the South, that is a part of the culture. So I do find there was, to me, offensiveness versus insensitivity. I think there's a little difference. I wasn't offended by the Comme des Garçons blonde wig. I thought that was inspiration. I also thought the Dolce and Gabbana was inspiration. But again, that's just me, and art can
Mhm.
also be objective. So, but I'm also not Japanese directly. So I also want to respect and, honor for other cultures. So I think, I don't know, sometimes I think it is a blurred line. And to someone in the room's point, if someone's like, oh, it could be really cool if she's eating pizza because we're an Italian company and we have a Japanese model and we merge both cultures and we show that through food. I don't know, I guess I could see where that could slip between the cracks, so to speak.
But the actual conversation we're having about it is what should be happening. Because then the decision is made to go forward with it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's not happening, because Gucci is an Italian company. And Gucci doesn't know anything about what you just said about Sambo, salt and pepper shakers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They just said, you know what? We've
Things
seen
like,
it somewhere. This would be a
Mm.
creative play on making a face mask. Let's go for it. But again, nothing remains in a bubble. Everything goes global. And again,
right.
2018 and 2020, without context, without even your perspective that you shared, the very first visual representation of this is offensive.
I think there's also a historical context of looking at who you're offending and who's doing the offending.
Mhm.
Who's benefiting from doing the offending.
Yep. Who's benefiting from the offending that's a very good question. All right. So next slide. This one is, I love that I always have a room full of ladies. I thank y'all, and online too. This next one is just a brief example of the power of suggestion. And it's gonna shock you guys. Only in that sometimes perception ends up being reality when you look at exactly, again, who's doing the offending and who's benefiting. So let's show this next slide really quickly.
I'm afraid. Oh,
Can you guys see this online? So this is Puma's Storm Adrenaline woman's sneaker. And someone who owns this sneaker posted this online from this particular perspective. It's the top-down view that you have when you put your shoes on in the morning. This particular model, this Storm Adrenaline model, is a woman's only colorway. So men never saw this. But this particular lady who owns this pair of shoes saw this. She happened to be of Jewish faith and ethnicity, and Puma being a German company from the same lineage of the family that is Adidas. This was her perception. What's that? No. Why would they? They don't want to be in the same boat as Adidas. But again, this was someone's perception. When they designed this sneaker, I'm pretty sure as a designer, if they did the top-down view, if it was in black and white before, color material designers got to it, you don't see that. But if the color and materials team did that and they saw it and let it go, that's a different story. Totally different story. The designer of that particular shoe, when they did that, they did not, at least I don't think, create this colorway and perception of this. when the design reached the color and materials team, or if Puma has just a color team and then a separate materials team, I can't remember offhand if they do. But once this reached the level of color and materials, that's where something like this gets made. But this is this woman's perception of this now, owning this shoe and top down looking at it. She sees Hitler.
It's hard to unsee it.
Yeah, it is.
Ridiculously hard to unsee it.
Once you, yeah.
And it's a woman's only shoe. It came out this color for women. So we all, from now on, we're all gonna be looking at our shoes from the top down, right? So next slide, we get into the phase of what steps should be taken to avoid offensive product creation. All right, this is what we have, where we have to think about this. So next slide. So we start talking solutions, or at least steps that should lead to solutions, right? So the diversity inclusion initiatives, Gucci launches an initiative to foster cultural diversity and awareness. Dapper Dan, who, Gucci has over the years done some really horrible things to. They bring him in to be on, their diversity, to lead their diversity initiatives. And they launch campaigns for, Black creators and designers. And then the next slide, we have in 2021, Prada announces their Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Council, which includes Theaster Gates and someone who we all know and love, her programming and production, Ava DuVernay.
Sean, if the teams were diverse, if the people who are creating the product,
Mhm.
if there was diversity on those teams
Mhm.
and people from different backgrounds and cultures, would you need this?
Awesome questions.
I
Awesome
mean-
question. Do you need that if when things are being made, footwear, accessories, apparel, if you have those diverse and more objective viewpoints and experiences in the room when things are being made, does that stuff happen? No, it doesn't. It's
Global companies, they have people in all these countries where when they're selling to all the global market.
Mhm.
So at the design phase or stage, when you're going to product, or even when you're going to sample something, sending out an email to regions that if you're talking to the Middle East and you're using this kind of beautiful like calligraphy, but that ties back to some like a language that you cannot read,
Mhm.
but you were trying to take inspiration from, you should somebody in the region should be able to put their eyes on it and have some sense of like, okay, give some feedback, because again, if you are a global, it's not like they're only on 34th Street working in this, you only know 2 people, you're hoping to make this a global thing. You have all of these marketing advisors, all of these people, there is a way for them to double check and get some advisement without having to say that every person is responsible for the one cell. There are multiple checks along the way that you're not doing.
Glad you said that. Next slide. We are all on point, online and in the room. So here we are with what I call personal inventory. Next slide. So here we are. We are at takeaway questions, our own personal inventory. Question number 1, not looking for answers. Again, these are takeaway questions, and these are things that we want, folks both with me here in person and online to take away with them, to put a system in place that will make sure you do not make this unflattering highlight reel that we're going to begin teaching everywhere. So question number 1, does my brand/company stay in tune with the issues that affect my staff and consumers, like the murder of George Floyd, Sonia Massey, so many others, Israel-Hamas war, Am I paying attention as a company to these things? Does my brand design products that could be perceived as insensitive or offensive? Does my brand ask its designers to share the inspiration behind their work? And I can tell you a lot of times, no, they don't. Something that needs to happen. Jeremy Scott's shackles that were put on a shoe and produced, there was no conversation behind his inspiration on that. It wasn't. Should I challenge my designers if something is a risk? As executives and seniors, C-suite, management at any level, if I am overseeing these units where things are being designed and ultimately produced, should I be doing some kind of risk assessment?
Do you have to be senior though? I mean, honestly, there's things like a woman my age might do, like using certain emojis online that you're gonna look at and be like, oh my God, you're an idiot, right? But sometimes you don't know that what you're using.
Well,
So
there's
all levels should weigh in. I
No,
think if you
totally.
see something that's
totally, but you're gonna see where I'm going with that, right? Why ask C-suite management, the folks who are over the creatives who are making the product? Does my company have a process in place that safeguards against offensive products being produced? That's where that comes in. Are my brand's marketing methods culturally insensitive or offensive? They should be doing their own highlight reel. If Adidas did their own highlight reel of the stuff we went through here today, they would be taking a lot more care in their campaigns.
I take it they don't.
Oh, no, they don't.
I was gonna say, or would they? I'm just throwing that out there.
Good questions to ask, but
Or would they? Because this is, once, twice, but this seems to be unfortunately
cereal. It's cereal.
right.
It's on now in the US even. So I actually live in Texas.
Mhm.
And in Texas, they've gotten rid of all the DEI programs in all of the universities. But all those people got hired, so who's gonna be bringing some of this up? That next generation, that we have to be sensitive to.
Well, it starts with us. It starts with us as consumers paying attention. It starts with us as makers and creators. It starts with us as people who are in certain positions at brands, who are in certain positions at colleges and universities that have fashion design programs and maker and creator programs, people who are really paying attention to that kind of stuff, like Scott and the folks and, Amy and the folks at LIM who pay attention to that stuff. Because not only do they know who their student base is, they know what city they're in and they know where, the makers and creators are in terms of their journey. So they're giving them those tools to make sure that, they'd be horrified if, one of the alum from LIM were to put out something that makes this list. Yeah,
I mean,
it starts with us. I think that, a lot of the knee-jerk DEI positions that were created at a lot of the brands that were put in to be so up high, they weren't about people and culture. They were about numbers and metrics to say that we're doing things to be more diverse and equitable and inclusive through numbers. I know companies that had DEI people and they were literally going, okay, we need to go through our staff count and we need to get the racial ethnicity of everybody here. What kind of DEI initiative is that? Right? So, these takeaway questions are things that we have to create as a process in our own making and creating and marketing and promotions and sales and everything. Are my brand's marketing methods culturally insensitive or offensive would seem like a question every company should add and just put into their way of doing business. And then here's the other one. Question number 7. Does my brand have anything in place that rectifies an issue once it's made known to my organization? Let's go back to the very first example that I gave us today. Nike said, wait, we offended people? Can we make some stickers? Right. Let's just make some stickers. Let's just tell everybody, take their shoes back, let's just slap some stickers on there, let's just cover that up. And I think we're good. That's the system. That was, and again, that was 1997, right? When that one happened. So there's a whole host of other things that have happened since then. Where if there wasn't a system, hopefully there is a system. And I can tell you honestly, I'm like, there's no system, but we're gonna have a system. Folks online and the folks here with me, we're going to have a system that'll be built into our maker and marketing and promotions and advertising and everything based on these 7 questions. Next slide. So, solutions. Should brands permanently create product review panels? Surely they could be made of people in those other regions. Surely. Should brands review feedback from their consumer base about upcoming products? What happened to focus groups? When's the last time any of us has been in focus groups? They don't exist anymore. The brands think they have it all figured out, but they obviously don't based on our unflattering highlight reel. They simply haven't figured it out.
I'm doing a focus group this semester, Sean.
Awesome. Love to hear it. Should brand executives push back on their designers and product managers to simply avoid potentially offensive products and designs? One more, go back one more.
Oh, there.
Yep.
There we go.
Should brand executives push back on their designers and product managers to simply avoid potentially offensive product designs? Risk assessment, part of the process. Should it be there?
That's the filter. When you actually do try boards and do this.
Yep.
It's working, probably work for a lot of us.
Yep.
It can be a process because you can do that and you filter out the products that don't sell and that lead to a consumer.
Yep.
They also have to think about cultural influence and some impacts, and that's probably an added component that's very different than where people are going back to the shows. How do you put that in as a
It already exists. They just have to create this specific filter, right?
It has to be the right person. He's that person. He's the charge person.
Mhm.
He's challenging. He needs to be a challenge.
This would be more important than a DEI position to me. This would be more important. And last but not least,
Hi, Rue.
what's that?
Yep. Hi. When are you leaving now? You going on the train right now?
I
Mute-
think we
mute,
need to
please.
mute somebody. You know, I'm gonna just say for our team, we see so many things up front in the process. I mean, so we're out and about looking at products all the time, sometimes before they are ever offered to a consumer.
Mhm.
It's our job to say something. We shouldn't be shy. If we see something that is a potential offense, we should do it. And you don't have it as example, but it's the student offenses happen too. If you remember, was it last year, or the year before, FIT had a fashion show where they had prosthetic ears and
Mm,
lips or something. There was
Wow.
something like really horrible.
wow.
So it happens all. Everybody, certainly on my team, you are empowered to say something. If you see something that you think is like, time out, people,
Mhm.
don't be shy, because you're gonna help them in the long run. We don't want to have embarrassing accessory.
And I think in our big
Issues.
cities too, to your point, we're in sensory overload here. We're in visual. We're in sound, in sight, in smell. We're in sensory overload in a big city like New York. So at some point, our filter to some things gets numbed when it shouldn't be. So these are the kind of things we have to put in place to sort of, strengthen our filter again. And in our creative process, and even in stuff that we're seeing, like I've owned over 4,000 pairs of sneakers in this lifetime and counting. 4,000. And what that woman saw from that Puma shoe, I have never seen anything like that. I didn't pick up on that. She saw it. That's probably the only pair of sneakers she owns. And she caught that. And here I am, I've owned 4,000 and never caught something like that. So we have to put things in place personally, internally, to catch these things.
Question. So for those of us in the accessories council, I put myself in that bucket, that are running small brands.
Mhm.
In my case, I'm solo and have, some external partners. And, whenever I'm gonna release something, I always get feedback from, a diverse range of friends, perspectives, taste levels, etc.
Uh-huh.
But you can't do that 100% of the time. So what's kind of like something you recommend for companies where you are one person, so the diversity is quite literally limited to you and your experience? It's tough. I don't think there's necessarily an answer. I mean, you definitely like go back to the questions and like
Right.
before a big launch, like you want to get a million eyeballs on it, but like, can someone like me or somebody else on the council that runs a small business, like sit down with you or another expert, like various number of experts? in the
Yes,
field and
you
be
can.
like,
Yes,
That would be great.
absolutely you can. And you should make that a part of your process in the world that we're in.
Thank
You definitely should. Like, I'm quick to make myself available to anyone in Accessories Council, online, in person. You guys all have someone like me to come in and, do these kind of things and make sure you don't make this highlight reel. It's not a good highlight reel. Was this highlight reel exhausting or what? Right? Just,
It's sad.
and just imagine, people from various religious, sexual, racial, countries. These are the things that they have to deal with all the time.
But Sean, I think I'm gonna plug you for a second,
Mhm.
because you have classes.
Yes.
They're small format, so if you got to take one of the classes.
Yep.
I was lucky to see him at Drexel. It was a bigger classroom, but you can go into Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And he has a whole series of
We have a
just
diverse array of
amazing
courses that
opportunities.
put more perspective from the business and cultural side of, for me, it's footwear, but easily applicable to apparel and accessories. And then, for solutions, again, let's just say, after all of that we discussed, the questions and everything we've seen, let's just say a brand puts something out that makes the mark. It finally makes the market. Should brands be penalized monetarily for allowing racially and culturally offensive merchandise and or apparel to reach retail? I see that similar to an automotive maker who ends up being penalized for putting something in a car on the market that is unsafe or could kill someone. Toy makers face penalties. Other companies in different industries, when something reaches the market that is very detrimental in any way, shape, or form, they are fined. Monetarily, they pay a penalty. Why does that not happen in fashion, footwear, and accessories?
I think that does have to be also in the lawyer.
Sure.
I think with a lot of, because I also think about this specific issue, because people have come to me like, can I sue? And I'm like, how can we show that you actually suffered a harm that's worth money, right? So that's the problem and the obstacle with figuring out a way. Because like I said, I've thought about, I'm like, how could we figure out a way?
Well, that one is on the
Some kind of
personal,
law.
that one is on the personal side, where someone wants to personally take up,
Yeah,
feeling offended and feeling like they need to be compensated. I'm talking more of
like government.
the government hands down a penalty for you neglectfully not putting yourself through a process where now you've put something on the market. I mean, because what you have to realize too, at the end of this, something reaching the market, it's affecting people's mental health to have to deal with all this. We're tired from just sitting here for the last hour and change discussing this and seeing all these offenses. Right? Mental health is a real, there's an attack on mental health on a lot of different levels. And if a brand has gone through all of that to put something out, that's basically an attack on you for, what you have to deal with, in whatever box you check. And I'm not to say that in an offensive way, but in whatever box that is, something's out here that has been put out here as an assault on. Companies should have to pay for that.
It's the words.
Oh, I'm talking product, marketing, I'm talking sales tactics, everything. I feel brands should be able to face a monetary penalty handed down from government for that.
But isn't the First Amendment about First Amendment, Second Amendment, freedom of speech? And
There are limitations.
I mean, yeah, it's terrible, but how do you define?
Well, let's look at the examples we ran through here today, right?
They're terrible.
They're pretty
They're
concrete.
terrible.
I think when you reach that level, there should be a penalty. Because you obviously haven't put anything in place to make sure that it didn't happen. So there's a neglect right there.
As I sit in my Adidas sneakers, shouldn't the penalty be though that we don't buy them?
I'm wearing them too. I'm wearing them too, but again, it's about.
And I think that, I'm sorry, and I think I was trying to unmute. I think that is the challenge, to Karen's point. It's very hard to quantify the harm because the harm can be subjective, because the perfect example, and I too have a pair of Sambas sitting right here.
Mhm.
And so are we not gonna, you know what I mean? We don't, the harm is, and the three of us are no less, shocked or offended by what Adidas has done, but we, by wearing them, we still support. But also fashion, in many classifications, in many government classifications, to a large degree, is still considered art. And when it's considered art, it is extremely subjective and non-regulated.
Mhm.
And so that also makes it very challenging to pinpoint, again, to one, quantify what the harm is, and then also say, and hold it to the same standards as we do the FDA and things like that.
Yep,
There have been some legal cases
yep.
recently, like we just wrote in a magazine about Jack Daniels versus Bad Spaniels.
Mhm.
And Bad Spaniels was a pet toy that took a riff off of the Jack Daniels bottle, and Jack Daniels won. There was another one,
That was an
Yeah.
right? But there's
that's
another one with
right.
Tom Brown and Adidas.
Yeah, another
With the
IP,
stripes.
another IP. I think more of what I'm thinking about when I pose the question, should brands be penalized monetarily? And when I'm talking about a penalty being handed down from government. Taking in consideration the amazing toll that people have to endure from all walks of life when a company has just gone the distance and put something out here that reaches that level of offense. When I think about, and again, we're wearing Adidas sneakers, but we're not wearing any of the sneakers that are made to offend, right? I mean, Adidas is a 70 some odd year old, almost 80-year-old company, right? Now, when a brand makes a mistake with a product, this is what we're talking about. When a brand makes a mistake with a particular product, they should be penalized. They should face a fine for that, similar to, let's just say, I believe it was Nissan when they had the airbag issue. And they knew they had an issue with airbags, defective airbags that they put in cars. And Nissan had to recall a couple million cars. But they were also fined for that because it came to find out that they knew the airbags they were putting in those cars were defective from the manufacturer, Takata. They knew it. And they still said, we're behind. We got to get these cars out. So millions of cars ended up with defective airbags. And they faced it doubly because there were people who were in car accidents and died. And then there was the government fine that came down on Nissan and other car makers for knowing and willingly putting out cars with unsafe product. So I feel like this should be in that same vein where if you know at some point something reaches the market where it's basically an assault on people's religions, culture, sexual orientation, you should be paying for that. That's just my thought. What everyone else feels, sure, you know. But again, I think we all agree in this particular instance, there needs to be a better process in place for all of us. As makers, as creators, as consumers, we all need to have a process in place to contribute to fighting this stuff off. Because obviously one doesn't exist. We just went through the fact that one doesn't exist.
Obviously, after it's all made, it's going to go to somebody who sold out this test. It's not. And I think, like, I do think the responsibility for this week starts with us. But also, I think the level of pressure that then that puts on the company if they made a diversity hire this person's job description also catch anything that fall the rounds of anything that's gonna be offensive. I don't think that's fair to the individual.
Sure it is. If that's their job, if that's their job.
Yes, if that's their sole job, I think there needs to be like in the far world. Yeah, like I, studied studies or something along the lines where I can look at all of this, as well as like the increases. But I think the average employee is a lot of that.
Oh, yeah.
Catch things that might like not be in there. So whatever the thing is, they can cost.
That's why I speak to a process being in place. Yeah. Right? That whatever your capacity is, you've implemented, right? Like, we're not all under a rock. We know when people are putting stuff out that isn't right.
Yeah.
We see labels on candy. We see, even look at what the cannabis industry is doing now. They're putting out packaging that looks like video games. Like, there are a lot of companies who are making deliberate attempts to deceive and get your attention in other ways, right? And I think it's the same thing in fashion and footwear. There are these deliberate attempts to get you to pay attention and think about us over our competitors.
A team amongst that person.
It should definitely be a team. Should definitely be a team. I mean, what happens if it's one person and that person goes on vacation in the middle of a product launch? Like, there's those basic things where something could fall through the cracks and it could cost a company a lot of money. But like, even like, there are companies where when you work for that company, your first couple of weeks, you're being indoctrinated into the history of the brand. Scott and I were just talking about this with one example earlier. Like, every company doesn't have that process. But should they? Should I come into a company like Adidas knowing already that as a marketing professional, they have a ridiculously horrible highlight reel of offenses that now I'm taking this role and I know the history of this brand, I need to be sensitive to when I'm coming up with the next SL72 campaign? Yeah, I should.
I look at fining and I wonder who would benefit. Because to me, all that would do is empower attorneys to go out and sue. And, if it don't, like, I look at the Disabilities Act, right now, there are just, our members, I should have a sidebar. If you're not ADA compliant on your website, get there. Because there are legal firms going out and suing. People that are disabled don't benefit when they sue you. The lawyers benefit. So, in the same thing, and I can't imagine when you see those ads, the knife that you just must feel and how hurtful it must be. I understand that, but if you're suing people and it like all the money just goes to a lawyer, what's the point?
Well, again,
If
that's why I'm speaking
Yeah.
about it coming from government
Yeah,
as opposed to, leaving it open to any personal liability issues. Because if that's the case, we could literally sue any brand we want in New York City for anything right now. If my shoelace on this shoe is too long and I trip over it and fall, I can sue someone. Like state to state and country to country, personal injury rules, copyrights, everything is different. So I'm not even talking about on that level. I'm talking about on the, 1964 Civil Rights Act level. There should be fines and penalties for a brand allowing stuff like this to happen.
Something through the FTC. Federal Trade Commission.
So the FTC, I'm glad you brought up the FTC, and this was a real case. Does anyone remember the Skechers Shape Ups? The shoes that Kim Kardashian was in those ads telling everyone, if you wear these, you'll have a butt like mine, without necessarily implying that, but implying that at the same time. So Skechers was one of 3 companies that was sued for those shoes. The FTC sued Skechers, Reebok, and the original maker of those shoes, a company called MBT, for deceptive practices, for saying that those shoes had healthy qualities, that wearing them would help you work out, would help you with exercise. And they were sued for millions of dollars. All 3 of those companies collectively were sued by the FTC for millions of dollars. We have precedent. We have it. We have precedent. It should be done.
Is there in the FTC a division that monitors those things?
Yes,
There is.
Yeah. there is.
So you would call that under deceptive advertising, like some of these things, or
Not deceptive, offensive.
offensive, but where would that fall on the?
It would have to be created, it does not.
Yeah, it would have to be created.
Yeah.
They don't.
They would have to create the standard
Like create.
to
and
go after
create
brands.
and go after.
Yeah, they would have to create the standard. Currently, it doesn't exist. It should be created.
So is that the organization that should be the watchdog? That
Most likely.
yeah.
It would most likely be the FTC.
Yeah.
Because if you're engaged in commerce and trade, like,
It's all of these.
which is all of this, yes. So
The FTC is focused on consumer protection, so.
Yep.
It's a way to.
consumer protection, FTC, yep. So this is where I'm going with throwing that question out there. My personal view is yes. Others may have a different opinion, which is fine, but these conversations need to be had. The checklist of questions that, that we had up on the last slide, for these questions, everyone needs to take with them.
The
Implement.
other thing, Sean, I just want to mention something just about when it comes to the FTC and regulating speech. I think it's just important for us to remember that that protection is not absolute.
Mhm.
So it is, right? And so I think I lean more towards, your line of thinking with this, because it is, and just because of the tinderbox moment that we're living in the last, right, however many years, as it relates to lots of these topics,
Mhm.
I think there is just an inherent sort of new responsibility to, to the FTC to make sure that there isn't, that that speech is not leading to, and whatever that, the communication of, commercial design, industrial design, whatever, fashion
Mhm.
design, it's not leading to harm.
Right.
So
Jill,
it's just,
absolutely right.
not absolute. And so I think that's, yeah, I have an idea too when we come to about academia, but anyway, I'll bring that up later.
Look forward to seeing you in New York, Jill.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that is the end of Fashionably Wrong. I'm leaving it open to Q&A, either from online or here with me. Again, this was put together actively to be taught, be it personally, at companies for internal training, colleges and universities, at my academy, open to the public for people. This is a serious initiative that, again, Terrence couldn't be here today, but he's very much behind, obviously, for, reasons that we've all seen, heard, and been personally affected by. And this is open to a lot of people. This is, thankfully for you guys here, as an exclusive group online and in person with me today, taking this, but we should be spreading the word that this is something that makers, creators, marketing, sales professionals, folks at colleges and universities and, heads of programs, we want everyone to lean into this way of thinking about creating a process so that I don't have any more material to put on this unflattering highlight reel, which, to be honest, I could have done a solid 2.5, 3 hours of just the highlight reel. But then you would have all been mad at me and said, why did he put us through that? We hate his guts. Accessories Council, don't bring that guy back.
But we are gonna bring you back.
Yes. So are there any questions from anyone online before we get to in the room?
Sean, I don't have a question. It's Tamiko again. This was phenomenal.
Thank you.
This is my first time hearing this. I mean, I know how great and amazing you are. This is absolutely necessary.
Thank you.
Phenomenal. And it's solution oriented and solution driven. So I'm clapping virtually.
Thank
So
you.
proud of this. And Karen, thank you.
We'll
And
see.
I will say this publicly though, in 2020, Karen and I had conversations. Karen reached out to me around diversity. And so Karen, I know this is genuinely something that you want to bring to the council and to your community. So I also want to say thank you for that. I see you and I see how important this is to you. And I just think it's phenomenal.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Tamiko. Thank you. Anyone else online with questions before we get to in the room? We'll make sure everyone online can hear the questions too.
I didn't have a question, but I do just have a comment. In coming from academia, I did put a link into the chat in case anyone's interested. I think there are some lessons from architecture for the fashion industry to adopt around design concept and what's called a partie diagram. And the documentation and the chronicling and, and how you have to really catalog your process. And design inspiration is incredibly important in architecture. And oftentimes when you get to the final product, it potentially may be lost, but that is part of the whole critique and design process, is that you have documented along the way. So you understand that chronology. And I think there is a responsibility for, in academia for that to be taught. Those lessons, right? The parallels between architecture and fashion. But then it could extend out to corporations, brands, the same process, because you have in-house designers, right? I mean, you're not just only designing in academia.
Yeah.
So that's just yeah.
I will share that with everyone.
Yeah.
I just opened it up.
Yeah, we're gonna share that with the council and folks
So-
attending here today. Thank you for that, Jill.
Sure.
And I know you as an experienced pro in the industry, you are awesome with being able to provide these kind of resources. Thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else online with a question, comment, thoughts about Fashionably Wrong? Okay. So now for the room. Any questions? I didn't do that good a job. I know y'all have questions.
We were talking all of it.
It's been so eye-opening. Sometimes you just forget and you talk about there's so much noise and things and we do come down to it.
Yeah. We become desensitized to the everyday offenses and flags of things that we should be paying attention to. And then there's the big moments. The George Floyds, the Sonia Massey's, the all these Mike Browns, we pay attention to those. And, to be honest, 2020 was a very awkward year for people of color because, all the folks who we knew who were, of other races and ethnicities and racial backgrounds, we get calls, what can we do? And it was like, be the good person you are. Like, the pressure was being put on people of color to come up with a way for you to be a good person. Like, it was really awkward for Black people, I could speak for in particular during that time. And it led to me thinking about, like, as being someone who's been teaching this program, social studies, for 13 years, it led to me mentally going back and thinking about all the different times passive aggressively we've been bombarded with these offenses. Sure, there's the overt ones, like you turn on the news and we've been killed again. But then there's the ones who, some of the time we're passive aggressively, being thrown at us, and then other times we're not even being aware of it, we're participating in. How about that part, right? We're literally participating sometimes in the offenses against us by not paying attention to things we should be paying attention to anymore, and being in big cities being desensitized. So I think that something like this, especially for us who are fashion and footwear professionals, allows us to reset, put things in place that make us all sharper and smarter with what we make, how we promote, market, sell it, what we buy. It's a reset all the way around for us. I would say take it product by product, right? Like, if you know you're going out shopping for, it's similar to when people buy new cars. Nobody just walks onto a car lot and just says, I like that color, I like that car, let me get it. There's always a certain level of research that goes into someone buying a new car. Even if it's just basic, how much does it cost? What colors does it come in? Is it four-door? It still starts a process. And that's what I would say to anyone. Put yourself through a process. It can start simple, and over time, let it evolve into something more elaborate, but ultimately becomes second nature, right? Like right now, the Olympics is on. My wife's a big Olympics fan. She's Jamaican, so track and field is her thing. When we're watching people running without paying attention to their process, we just see people running. But they're actually literally putting themselves through a process through every phase of that race. We got to do the same thing. We don't necessarily need to verbalize it and make it known to everybody what step we're taking. We just need to have those steps. And you see things differently when you understand that people are putting themselves and putting things through a process, and it leads to a greater appreciation for it. I just used to see people running. Oh, that guy's fast. Oh, that guy won. He came in second. But then when you look at the replays of these races, you can literally look at the athletes and see they're now putting themselves in their next gear, their next phase. They're changing their breathing. Their steps are getting longer or shorter. If it's hurdles, you start paying attention to their process. We have to be process driven like that, especially when it comes to things that we're buying and making and creating, and even the way that we present things to other people. I think we sort of have a de facto way of presenting things to people that looks like something we're familiar with seeing people do. And that doesn't necessarily always work for what you're trying to do. Lawyers know this very well, right? When it's time to go to litigation, when you're in court, there's an entire process. It is forensic, right? But what you do in court at 2:00 is not going to be the same thing you do tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the next case, or even for the same case. Because now things have come up that have allowed you to change, right? You got to alter the game plan.
And also what happens when you're at your desk preparing,
Right.
getting to that.
These phases and processes, we should all be putting in place for certain things, especially things we're going to present to the world. I put myself through a process when it was time to create Fashionably Wrong. And when Karen and I, when we all originally did it, it wasn't even called Fashionably Wrong when we first did it. It was called Avoiding Fashion Offenses. Sounds kind of corny, right? But we ran it up, we put it out there. Right? But over time and meeting people and hearing from people, let's go back to Terrence's statement. Let's go back to Terrence's statement, slide number 2. I'm gonna read it, right?
Get rid of this for you. Oops. There we go.
So, on May 25th, 2020, my life changed in ways I never expected. Those changes include looking at the clothes I wear and the sneakers on my feet differently. Now more than ever, I'm more in tune with the messaging and the stories behind the apparel and footwear that is produced for mass consumption. To my surprise, it hasn't been all good. That was what he said to me. After what we saw happen to his brother. He had to start paying attention to everything because you know what happened to him? He became a social activist without wanting to be a social activist. He didn't want to be where we've all seen him. People actually found him and they were like, he has a brother in Brooklyn. And they went and found him and he was thrust into the social activism that he's in. He was quietly dealing with what we all saw publicly. He was dealing with what we saw personally in his family. There's no time for going out to want to be an activist with that. But that's what came his way. And realizing that he was going to be in the public eye and speaking to things like social justice and, you know, police processes and, you know, inequality and stuff like that, he started paying attention. He put himself now through a process to pay attention to what he wears. He was forced to do it. We're not being forced to do it, but we should do it. Does that answer the question? Very long-winded way to answer, I'm sorry, but.
Our hope is to have Sean and Terrence do a program
Yes,
in the coming months. That's our,
Yep.
our plans. We're just looking for the right venue to hold us, because I think it needs to be a bigger audience. I'm so grateful for everybody who attended today.
yep,
And I'm so disappointed for everyone who missed the presentation today, which is why we're recording it too, because this is something that every single person in our industry should have in their head
Yep.
all the time.
I think we took similar approach in education, change
Yeah.
the future, but I think about accountability. I wonder if we don't need an international body for this industry, because in addition to these, so many of these offenses are cross-cultural and cross-boundary.
yeah, absolutely, like the
And-
one we showed in South
Yeah,
Africa, absolutely.
And not only in this realm, the environmental impact of
Mhm.
shipping our stuff to the dump in
And-
Chile.
mhm.
And the labor offenses that happen in other countries.
Mhm.
I mean, so much of what's wrong with this industry is because of its global nature.
Mhm.
I feel like we need an international approach and an international body that it's gonna hold the industry accountable. And I don't think that happened, but.
Well, it
That's
happened,
how-
it starts to happen, that conversation starts
Yeah.
when one country takes that stand.
Yes, which is why it's nice to start to see the EU as a body start to take some accountability, at least on the sustainability front.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yep,
it's gotta be cross-national.
yeah.
You know, I must wonder, there's people like Evie Evangelo. Have you ever worked with Evie, who does a lot with the UN? I wonder if it doesn't start
I've been trying
there,
making some connections.
Right.
you know,
I've
because
been thinking about
there,
this For a while, yeah.
Mhm.
it might be a interesting
Yeah.
place to have this kind of presentation
exactly.
to say globally, you know, we need
Yeah.
to.
We need to have this, yeah.
So how's everybody feeling? I know it's a bit overwhelming, but how are we feeling about today?
I think this unstarted education, like as makers or creators who do that part, you know, and wanna become designers, have to learn not only how to design, but learn about cultures in general. And you have to put yourself in other people's shoes. I think, I don't know, that's anybody else, this may be just me, as a Black person in America, you are forced to learn what Western culture is. My parents are American. So, you know, you have to learn Western culture. You have to learn what the majority Caucasian America is like. And so you are automatically taught to learn other cultures. I don't think as Americans, if you're born here and you think this is your only heritage, like you don't know where your people come from, whatever.
Mhm.
Everybody comes from someplace else, but even if it was like 300 years ago. But if you don't know that, then you just are seeing your lane. And you don't have to look at the immigrants or anybody else around you. And I think that's the gap. And that's why these things happen.
Partially, yes. Partially, yes. The other part of it is we're now empowered more with information and access to information now than we've ever been.
Right.
Right? So, again,
You have access, but are you looking?
But are you, yeah.
right. It has to be, that's where the process has to come in. It has to be a process. Like I said earlier, I have sneakers in my closet from countries I haven't been to yet. I made the effort to get sneakers from countries I haven't been to yet. I can make the effort to find out about those countries. Right? Anyone else? You're welcome to come over.
Some in Brooklyn.
You're welcome to come over to the academy in Dumbo, Brooklyn, where some of it resides. Scott will come and see that soon. Support me.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Karen, again.
and
Thank you to the folks at the Accessories Council, an amazing team of folks who have always supported everything that I do and that we do collectively for the greater good of the industry. Thank you, guys. A round of applause for you guys. And
We'll see
anyone,
you soon.
you will see me soon, but anyone online, if you don't already have my information, we're happy to get
Yeah.
it to you.
Reach
We'll
out.
get it to you. And
Share.
I look forward to sharing more of what we're doing on the education front. To be continued. Thank you and have a good rest of your day.
Bye.